Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck. We have a great episode in store for you today. Today, we're going to dive into one of my favorite topics. I have to tell you, I was excited about this one. I was going over my notes. I was looking at what I wanted to cover in this episode. And I'll tell you what, I'm excited. I am ramped up to go through this material because I know the impact that this stuff has on people and their sales success, as well as their lives. I've seen it happen time and time again. And I've seen it happen with people that I've worked with and coached. And I am just completely excited about sharing this information with you guys in today's episode. So stay tuned. We're going to be coming up in just a moment. We're going to be digging into how to master impact-driven questions and how to crush your sales goals. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, this is Joe Beck with The Sales Activist. Are you a coach, consultant, or entrepreneur who's struggling to create dynamic and consistent sales success in your sales effort? Does your calendar for new appointments look like a barren wasteland and you just don't have enough opportunities to be able to try to win new business? Well, if this sounds like you, I want to help. For well over 30 years and after tens of thousands of live sales interactions and hundreds of millions of dollars of closed business for companies that I've worked with and for, I've developed a proprietary impact sales mastery program that you can learn how to create dynamic and consistent sales success for yourself, all without spending extra money on advertising. In fact, you can do it without spending a single dollar on advertising. And best yet, we can guarantee your success. If you follow our Impact Sales Mastery Program, we'll guarantee within 6 months or less that you will triple your sales results. To get more details, just text the word sales to the number 409-509-SELL. That's sales to 409-509-7355. Connect with me there. Be more than happy to talk with you about the Impact Sales Mastery Program and exactly what it can do to help you and your business. I'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, and today's episode is going to be a good one. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I really wanted to do a deep dive talking about it today, digging into something that I think makes all the difference in the world for people that want to be elite sales professionals, people that really just want to crush their sales goals. Just do a great job in selling. And it really comes down to one thing, and it's about asking impact-driven questions. And we're going to talk more about that throughout this episode. But before we jump into that, one of the things I'd like to start with in opening up today's episode is just, taking a look at what's going on in the world around us and, the markets, what people are dealing with and doing as it relates to generating business. And now more than ever before, it's so important that people really dial in their sales process, really dial in how they approach professional selling, how they approach their prospects, how they interact with their clients, and really spend some quality time on making sure they shore up those relationships and do everything they can possibly do to position themselves as a trusted advisor in the eyes of their prospects and clients. And today's episode, we're going to be talking a lot about this particular issue because one of the things that I think is just so relevant in the world we live in today is people are very just naturally impatient. They don't take the time to truly cultivate sometimes relationships. They don't take the time to cultivate a sales interaction. They just jump right in. They want to kind of just get right to things. They feel that because the rest of the world is impatient, that they need to be impatient. And unfortunately, it usually leaves them kind of falling short in the eyes of their prospects and clients, and not necessarily by way of the product, the service that they're offering, what it is that they do deliver. That is not even the issue yet. What is the issue is how people handle the interaction, how they build the relationship, the rapport, and more importantly, how they separate themselves from everybody else. See, one of the things that is so critical to your success is understanding the power of differentiation, understanding how it's so critical for you in today's market that you stand out and differentiate yourself from other people that may do what you do. And we've had guests on the Impact Sales podcast in the past who have highlighted for us that in many instances, the majority of sales professionals, whether they're a coach, a consultant, an entrepreneur, somebody selling for a company, the majority of sales professionals that are out there just aren't memorable in the eyes of their prospects and clients. You know, they just don't stand out. They sound very much like what everybody else sounds like. They don't put themselves in a position where they're separating themselves from the rest of the market, the rest of the community that might be calling on their prospects, and they sound just like everybody else. And the problem with that in today's world is it's already a noisy, crowded world. And when you sound like everybody else, when there isn't anything different about the way you approach your business, the way you conduct business, the way you handle your interactions, if you sound like everybody else, it is very likely that people are going to tune out and not listen to you. Not necessarily because of some of the things that you may be saying. They may be very impactful. They may be important things for people to hear, but naturally, the buying community now is hearing so much information. It's information overload, right? They can get information anywhere now. It's hitting them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're hearing it from all kinds of other people that do what you do or things similar to what you do, and it forces people to kind of tune out. It forces them to either make assumptions that they know what you're going to say or anticipate what you're going to say or cover. And as a result, they disconnect and tune out from the actual sales interaction. So today we're going to dive into one of the most critical elements of your sales success, something that you can do right now, today, no matter what your background, no matter what your training, no matter what it is that you sell or what you do, how you can stand out in a way that is professional, how you can position yourself in a much better light than the average person that's out there trying to sell. And most importantly, how you can literally question your way to crushing your sales goals, to just doing something that's a simple thing in your sales process that just makes your sales success just exponentially increase. And that's going to be all around the topic of asking impact driven questions, things that truly make an impact on the prospect, things that separate you from other people, the things that make a difference. And before we get into exactly what they are, I'd like to kind of set the stage. I'd like to kind of explain where this comes from and the significance of it. So in the average sales interaction, and it doesn't matter whether it is a phone call, an in-person meeting, it could be any type of sales interaction. As you all know, there are different stages to that interaction. Sometimes there's an early getting to know you phase, building rapport. There's data collection. There's the discovery phase. There's the stage where you actually get to a point where you might be discussing a solution, a product, a service, something that you may provide. There's all this variety of different stages. And of course, there's, a close in that process as well. Hopefully there's a stage where we try to tie it all together, put a ribbon and bow on it, and win the business. Well, unfortunately, as people go through the sales process, and this is really not particular to any individual type of environment, sales environment, it's just natural across all of them. There is this high degree of impatience, whether it's directed by the prospect, whether it's perceived by the salesperson, the person that's actually selling to the prospect. You know, across the board, there's this, just impatience with the process. And as a result, people make poor decisions as it relates to how they handle the sales process in and of itself. They literally shortchange some of the most important elements of it in a rush to get to a point that they can either ask for the business or hopefully get a commitment for that client to work with them. And it may vary from some of the things that some people may think or hear in how they conduct a sales interaction. But I am a huge proponent and a huge believer in asking impact driven questions. See, in the average sales interaction, doesn't matter what type of interaction it is, there is a line in that interaction. And it's a line where the average person from a sales standpoint, the average coach, consultant, entrepreneur, or sales professional that's calling on their client, there's a line where that average person tends to stop. And I don't mean stop entirely. I mean, they stop cultivating the sales relationship, the sales interaction, and they try to go for a close, or they try to go back to product. They try making it about them. So I want to just kind of phrase this in a way that I hope resonates with everybody. So I want you to visually imagine in the middle of a conversation, this dotted line that runs right through the conversation, top to bottom. And that's what I call the impact line. Now, I call it the impact line because I believe that the average sales producer out there, the average people out there, being successful to a certain degree, only work up to about the impact line. And that's where they feel that they've done enough to ask for the business. That's where they feel they've done enough to try to close or try to move forward with a commitment, whatever it is, however they're defining it in their particular model. I call that the impact line. Now, the impact line is the point by which the average person stops as it relates to determining the true impact that their product, service, or offering will have on their prospect or client. Now, the truly elite, the pros out there, the people that just rock their sales results across the board, and I hear this from people that I interview on the podcast, people that I talk to, associates, businesses, top level sales decision makers and thought leaders. The elite tend to go farther than everybody else. And as it relates to this impact line, and not everybody calls it that, I call it the impact line because I believe that's the line where the average stop and the elite get started, the impact line. Now, it's so critical to your success that I'll tell you that in many cases, it can mean the difference between somebody failing and succeeding in an average interaction, failing and succeeding with an initiative or their sales goals, or failing and succeeding entirely in a career or in a business. Because this desire to kind of rush to things and develop a result faster because of whether it's an implied sense of urgency or whether it's an impatience that they're feeling or sensing from themselves or from the prospect, this rush to get to that point is shortchanging and shooting a lot of these sales efforts in the foot. It's literally stopping people from being successful. And let me explain to you what I mean. I think in every interaction, there's good and there's bad. In every sales environment, there's good things that you've done and bad things that you've done, things that you haven't explored as well as what you could have, things that maybe you could have described to a deeper level. And the one thing that a lot of people do, not everybody, but a lot of people do, is they spend way too much time talking about themselves, their product, their service, their offering. They believe that they have to establish this massive amount of credibility about their product or offering, about them, instead of talking about the most important person in the room, the most important person in the interaction, in the sales process, and that's their prospect or their client. They spend all of their time talking about how great they are, what they've accomplished, what their background is, how this solution, product, service, or offering is going to, just be amazing for them because they created it, they designed it, they represent it, whatever it is. And the problem with that line of thinking is they truly shortchange the most fundamental element of successful selling. And that's making it about the prospect. Make it all about them. Make it about what they get and truly what the impact is on them. And I call it the impact line because that's where the elite start going. That's where they start digging into what's going on in the sales interaction with the prospect and taking it to the next level. And I want to give you an example of kind of what that looks like or sounds like. See, a lot of people will have an amazing product, service, or offering, and they'll get to the point that they're discussing it. And before they even get to the solution or the actual need, they feel the need that they have to put it out there and see and test that prospect, whether they're serious about their product or service. And I'm all for trial closes. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a time and a place, the right time to do it and the right way of doing it. And one of the challenges that happens with the average salesperson that's out there, or the average person who is selling, is that they do it at the wrong time. They haven't spent enough time cultivating the impact that their product, service, or offering has on their prospect. And let me just kind of take it to the next level and explain how powerful that is in the sales process. So when you're working with your prospect or your client, if you only get to the point of where that impact line is, only up till that point. You haven't explored some of the many significant benefits that that person may be receiving on a personal level. And let's dig into that. Let's say your product or your service saves them money. Let's just use money as the first example. It saves them money. It saves them a significant amount of money. Let's say $100,000 or $200,000 or even more. Let's say it's $250,000 across a calendar year for a business. You offer something that saves that kind of money for your client. Well, the average person will say, well, it's, $250,000. It's a huge savings. And here's the cost of our product. Would you like to move forward so we can start helping you generate those savings? And in theory, that may make a lot of sense. But the problem is, because the average person does that, because everybody does that, your solution, whether you like it or not, sounds a lot like other people's. Even if you do something that's unique or different, or have a product that's different than other people's, there's probably a lot of other things that that person can do to save money for their business. And it may sound just like something else to them. In fact, I hate to burst your bubble, but they may have even tuned out already by that point. But where elite professionals take things is in exploring what that $250,000 would do for that person. And I don't just mean casually, I mean really digging into what impact it would have. Asking questions like, well, let me ask you, Mr. Prospect, if you were to save this $250,000 as a result of our work together, what would be the first thing that you would do with the money? And then sit back and listen to what they respond with. And then after they've described that a little bit, ask them more qualifying questions. Oh, that's great. So you would invest in hiring a couple of additional people for example, your marketing department. What type of work would they be doing? Oh, they would be working in the area of advancing new initiatives, new campaigns, so we could expand our business and bring in even more revenue. Oh, so that $250,000 would extend your business and add additional revenue because you'd be investing it into personnel. Absolutely. So what type of an impact do you think one of those campaigns may have? And the prospect says, well, the average campaign generates us, $200,000, $300,000 a year when done the right way. And you're trying to do a couple of additional ones as a result of that investment. And you can see where I'm going with that. Now, all of a sudden, we're down a talk track exploring impact of what it will do for their business, the bigger impact, the bigger result that they're going to receive. And we're not going to stop until we've made it detailed, specific, personal, and most importantly, and this is the thing that I want you to underline if you're listening to this, stop the recording, listen to it again, and write this down. You want them talking about it. You want them to personally verbalize exactly what it is that they're going to do with that $250,000. The more they talk, the more you win. If you get them describing to you exactly what they're going to do with the $250,000, exactly what impact it's going to have on their business, you get to be able to continue to explore that line. You get to say, so if you bring in 2 more people, would that take a little pressure off of you personally? Absolutely. It would make it a little bit easier for me. I wouldn't have to do some of that work myself. Would it give you more time back? Yes, it would. What would you do with your time? Well, I'd love to take more time off, or I'd love to invest time in other areas of the business that I personally haven't spent enough time with. So do you think that that time would give you even more of a return? Absolutely. Whether it was in peace of mind, whether it was in time with my family, whether it was helping the business grow in other areas, it would have a huge impact. Well, that's great. I'm so excited to hear that, Mr. Client. Could you please tell me, what do you think that impact would be? And how do you think it would make you feel? And let them tell you, let them describe it in their own words as much as they're willing to talk about it with you. Now, why is that so powerful? And you could go about this a lot of different ways. Why is it so powerful to play on the right side of the impact line when you're working with your prospects and clients? The first reason is, number one on the list, is because the average person doesn't do it. The first is you immediately differentiate yourself from the average person that's out there discussing the things that you'd be discussing with them. Your competition, other people that offer a similar type product or service, or just the fact that you might be competing for a limited budget. And it might be somebody offering something entirely different than what you offer, but they could be tapping into that available budget. What difference does that make? Well, it makes a huge difference because you are now doing something that the average person just does not do. They don't spend a lot of time on the right side of the impact line. Now, why else is that so positive and impactful? Well, let's go to the next level. Let's say you win that business, because I believe your likelihood for success has already increased dramatically because you crossed the impact line, and we'll get to that. But the other things that it does for you as it relates to your overall success is it prepares you better for when you get to the point to actually ask for the business, when you do try to close. I'll tell you why. Because in many instances, when people have spent a significant amount of time through guided discovery, through impact-driven questions that you've asked people, when they spend a significant amount of time there, they are now beginning to visualize those things being reality. They've now started to think that that is something that they want and need for themselves, for their business. They are living it already emotionally. They are imagining what it's like. They're starting to emotionally connect to that decision being made, and it makes the process of asking them to move forward that much simple. In fact, I will tell you this. I believe that if you can master the art of asking impact-driven questions and staying on the right side of the impact line in the sales process, I would say that many of your prospects, not all, but many of your prospects will be the ones that ask you what the next steps are, how can they move forward, how can they move forward with the solution that you're trying to offer, and the deals will close themselves. Now, obviously not in every instance, but in many. Why is that? Because now it's personal. It's about them. It's something that they've thought of and started to generate an emotional commitment to. Now, the other reasons why those impact-driven questions are so powerful on the right side of the impact line is because when you do get to the point that you are asking for the business, when you are trying to close the business and win that client, you now have so much more ammunition to be able to go back and leverage as it relates to the reasoning or justification as to why they need to make that decision. And those decisions are many times more emotional than they are logical. And because you've allowed that person to describe in detail what it is, what the impact would be, how it would make them feel, how it would impact them personally, and because you had them verbalize it, it has now started to take a place in their conscious mind. It has now manifested itself in the back of their mind as something that they want or need for themselves. And if there's ever a chance or a situation where they start coming back with objections or reasons why they can't do it, you now have a lot more ammunition to be able to go back to them and reiterate and read back the things that they shared to them that were important. One of the most powerful impact-driven questions that you can ask somebody, and I encourage you to write this one down as well, is why is that so important to you? And let them describe it. Let them describe the impact and why it's important to them, because it's personal. It's something that means something to them. And for whatever reason, a lot of people, almost all of the average salespeople don't spend a lot of time asking those questions. Maybe they just get uncomfortable asking the feely-findy questions about how somebody feels about their particular decision or the impact it's going to have. But I'll tell you that the elite, the people that are out there just crushing their sales numbers, are the people that know that that's where they have to play. That's the area that they need to spend their time. See, like it or not, in most instances, you're not the only solution that's out there. You're not the only option that people have. And don't forget, now more than ever before, people have access to information, tremendously easier than they used to be able to get it. They could just grab their smartphone and find anything they need to find out about any product, service, offering, person. They can just do it. So the fact is, you now need to up your game. You need to focus on impact, and you need to play on the right side of the impact line. Now, another reason why that is so powerful and ultimately so important to your long-term success is when it comes to a place where people perhaps come back to you later on after a transaction with some buyer's remorse or some second thoughts as to moving forward. You now have a much longer list of personal reasons as to why that decision was important, and more importantly, emotional for them, why it meant something. And the fact is, they gave those things to you. If you handled those questions the right way, they gave those things to you in their own words. They expressed to you why it was important, what it would mean to them, the impact that it would have, and the difference that it would make. In their own words, again, taking a place in their conscious mind. And I say conscious because, yes, it's subconscious, but the fact is, they're already thinking about it. It's in their mind. They're thinking about these things because you brought them to that place. Now, in addition to overcoming buyer's remorse, let's talk about the other thing that happens. And you all know what that is. And that's where somewhere in the process, whether it's early on or later on after you've won that business, a competitor may get involved in the account or with the client. They may, work their way into an opportunity to be able to win that client's business. And as a result, you could be in a situation where you're trying to preserve or protect the business that you've signed with them. Well, rest assured that the average salesperson has not crossed the impact line the way you have. It doesn't mean that there won't be some interest. Doesn't mean that the prospect or client won't be interested in looking at what the competitor has to offer. But it does mean that you've differentiated yourself already. You've stood out by doing things the right way, by literally putting yourself out in a way that is different than everybody else that's out there, by asking them impact-driven questions and allowing them to explain in their own words why it would mean something to them. Your average competitor won't do that. But even if they did, you now have had an opportunity to cultivate a relationship with that prospect. You differentiated yourself by asking the right impact-driven questions. You probably have delivered quality service, product, or offering to them. You've built and established a relationship there, and your competition is going to have to fight an uphill battle to be able to win that client over. And the fact is, a lot of times people will stay with somebody that they're currently working with because they feel they have a better relationship with that person, that they understand them better. And these impact-driven questions move you a long way down the path towards realizing that, toward putting you in a position where your prospects and your clients feel that you are different than everybody else out there. And it's such a powerful tool to be able to put yourself in a position where you can literally stand out from everybody else, completely improve your odds dramatically for sales success by asking impact-driven questions, and at the same time, prepare yourself for an easier, more comfortable close, as well as protecting yourself from things like buyer's remorse, as well as competitors coming in later on and trying to sell your prospects or clients out from under you. So, the theme for today is impact-driven questions and the power and how they can help you crush your sales goals. And I wanted to make sure I covered this in a way that, everybody can relate to. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your level of training or experience is. If you learn the right questioning techniques, if you master the art of communication during the impact, what I call the impact phase, the point from the impact line to the point that you actually have them move forward. If you master the art of questioning during that phase, your sales results will improve dramatically. Dramatically. Just like if you don't, just like if you shortchange that process, if you end up being like everybody else, running right to the point where you think you should probably ask for the business and you haven't really explored impact that much. Well, here's what's going to happen. Number one, you haven't differentiated yourself. You haven't stood out. Maybe you have an amazing product or service, but you've committed the cardinal sin of not making it about them and truly exploring impact. You missed a golden opportunity. And somewhere along the way, eventually somebody who does that, who is a master at impact-driven questions and does understand the importance of creating massive impact with their prospect, is going to win that business away from you. And I encourage you that if you are struggling in that area, or if you're struggling to close, that you take a hard look at where you are asking for the business and ask yourself the simple question: are you digging deep enough and making it enough about them? If you look back across the average time spent in your sales interaction, and you are spending the majority of the time talking about your product, your service, your offering, or you yourself, then I will tell you right now, you're absolutely not spending enough time talking about impact-driven questions, things that are going to plant you and your solution in the minds of your prospects and clients in a different way. And you're ultimately going to make it harder on yourself to be successful. So I encourage you to take some time, look into how you can master impact-driven questions in the sales process. It's one of the fundamental elements that we teach at the Sales Activist in our Impact Sales Mastery program. It's something that I believe all elite sales professionals master for themselves. They spend a lot of time on the right side of the impact line, standing out, differentiating themselves, and most importantly, putting things in the light of the prospect and making it all about them. So I want to wrap up today's episode. You can tell I was excited about this one. I had this stuff all bottled up. I was looking forward to this episode for quite a while to go through it. Make sure as you're looking at your sales process and your sales interactions that you take an honest, hard look at what it is that you're doing. Don't shortchange your own success by shortchanging the sales process. Double down on impact-driven questions. And I assure you, if you do that well and you master it, you will crush your sales goals. I want to thank you for listening to this episode. Got some more information coming up in a minute. But at the Impact Sales Podcast, we like to wrap up each segment by saying simply this: sell better and impact the world. We'll talk to you soon. Hi, this is Joe Beck with the Impact Sales Podcast. I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of you for supporting the Impact Sales Podcast and listening to our episodes on your podcast platform of choice. We love providing valuable, actionable content for anybody in a sales environment. So continue to support the Impact Sales Podcast. Like, comment, share on the platforms that you're listening to our content. And if we can provide any specialized information on the Impact Sales Podcast, just reach out to us on our website at www.thesalesactivist.com. This is Joe Beck with the Impact Sales Podcast. Sell better and impact the world. We'll talk to you soon.